छोटी बच्ची से शादी की तो फूलन देवी उसे गोली से मार देगी। बाबू गुड।
Phoolan Devi was born on August 10, 1963, in the village of Gorakhpurwa, near the Yamuna River in Uttar Pradesh, India. Her origins were deeply rooted in poverty, as she was born to a Malla boatman family belonging to the lower caste, one that traditionally occupied a marginalized place in society. Her father, Devadeen Malla, was a simple farmer with minimal land, and her mother, Moola Devi, shouldered the burden of the household under strained financial conditions. Phoolan was not the only child. She had older siblings who shared the daily struggles imposed by economic and social hardships. From an early age, Phoolan exhibited a defiant and rebellious spirit, marked by a tenacious will that defied the submissive expectations placed upon her by both her family and the rigid societal hierarchy. Phoolan's childhood was punctuated by relentless toil and humiliation. The family was embroiled in disputes over ancestral land, an issue that embittered their existence and fanned Phoolan's sense of injustice. By the age of 11, she had already faced brutal realities, confronting the greed and violence of relatives who attempted to swindle her family out of their meager land holdings. Her outspoken nature, rare for a girl in rural India, drew attention and scorn. But it also foreshadowed the life that lay ahead. At merely 11, Phoolan was married off to a man named Puttilal, a significantly older laborer from a neighboring village. This marriage, far from being an escape, turned into a personal hell, subjected to relentless abuse, physical, emotional, and sexual. Phoolan was left with scars, both literal and metaphorical, that would never heal. The marriage did not last long. She eventually escaped and returned to her family, a move that branded her as dishonorable in the eyes of her community. It was an indelible chapter that fueled her growing rage against the entrenched patriarchy and caste-based brutality. The turning point in Phoolan's life came when she was accused, falsely or not, of being involved in local petty crimes, whether due to genuine resistance or her reputation as a defiant girl. She attracted the attention of the Dakwa gangs that roamed the ravines of the Chambal Valley. By the late 1970s, Phoolan was forcibly taken by one such gang led by Babu Gujar, a notorious and brutal leader. Gujar's reign over the gang was marked by violence, and Phoolan was subjected to a level of cruelty that seemed almost inhuman. It was in this crucible of brutality that Vikram Malla, one of the gang members and of the same caste as Phoolan, rose to her defense. Vikram killed Gujar in a sudden act that both liberated Phoolan and elevated Vikram to the status of gang leader. Phoolan's association with Vikram marked the beginning of her life as a dacoit. With Vikram, Phoolan's relationship turned from victimhood to an uneasy partnership forged in survival. Together, they launched a series of raids, often targeting upper-caste landowners and moneylenders. Their criminal exploits were viewed by some as acts of revenge against a system that oppressed the lower castes. However, the myth of Phoolan Devi as a Robin Hood figure emerged later, heavily romanticized by outsiders seeking to attach a veneer of nobility to the bloody anarchy that prevailed in the ravines. While she was indeed avenging perceived injustices, these were brutal operations that left death and devastation in their wake. The most notorious chapter in Phoolan's career as a bandit was the Behmai massacre of 1981. Following Vikram's death at the hands of a rival faction led by Shri Ram and Lala Ram, two Thakur brothers, Phoolan was captured, tortured, and subjected to sexual violence in the Takur-dominated village of Behmai. She managed to escape, but the experience galvanized her fury. On February 14, 1981, Phoolan led her gang into Behmai, where they lined up and executed 22 Takur men as retribution for her abuse. The massacre sent shockwaves through the nation and solidified Phoolan's infamy. The Indian media dubbed her the Bandit Queen, a name that spoke to both her notoriety and the uneasy fascination she elicited. Phoolan's life in the ravines was marked by constant violence, fear, and betrayal. The Chambal Valley, with its thorny terrain and labyrinthine gullies, became both her fortress and her prison. The gang survived through raids and looting, and while Phoolan wielded significant power within her group, it was not a life of luxury. Stories of her harsh treatment toward disloyal gang members and rivals circulated widely, painting her as ruthless and unforgiving. She reportedly spoke Hindi, the local dialect Bundeli, and had a working knowledge of other regional languages spoken in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, which aided in her command over her followers and dealings with local villagers. Phoolan's health, like her life, was precarious. There were no doctors to tend to injuries sustained during raids or skirmishes, and illnesses were dealt with through rudimentary herbal remedies. Bathing and sanitation were scarce luxuries, and transport was limited to hardy horses and, at times, commandeered vehicles during raids. The closest semblance to comfort might have been makeshift camps within the ravines, far removed from any hint of civilization. There is no record of air-conditioned facilities or any luxuries that might soften her harsh existence. Her world was one of dust, gunpowder, and survival. Phoolan's activities attracted relentless police pursuits, but local authorities struggled to capture her. The dense ravines that hid her also served as a formidable deterrent. Her notoriety, however, caught the attention of political figures who began to see the value in leveraging her status for their own ends. In 1983, after intense negotiations, Phoolan agreed to surrender. The terms were extraordinary. She would only lay down her arms on the condition that she surrender to Mahatma Gandhi's portrait, and that her gang would be treated leniently. Phoolan and her gang emerged from the ravines before thousands of onlookers, including police officials and political leaders, in a moment that etched itself into the annals of Indian history. Her time in prison lasted over a decade, during which Phoolan's myth grew. She converted to Hindu mysticism, leaning into her faith as a coping mechanism against the isolation of incarceration. Prison was not devoid of humiliations. It was marked by legal battles and intermittent harassment from both inmates and officials. Nevertheless, she survived, buoyed by her status as a living symbol of resistance to social injustice. It was only after significant political pressure and a shifting climate around caste-based struggles that she was released in 1994. A move that sparked both public outrage and celebration. Phoolan's story took an unexpected turn when she entered politics, joining the Samajwadi Party and winning a seat in the Indian Parliament. The irony was stark. The girl once dismissed as worthless and the woman vilified as a murderer had now become an elected representative. Yet her political career was not without scandal. Opponents and detractors frequently raised questions about her past. Nevertheless, Phoolan retained the loyalty of her constituents, who saw her not just as a politician but as a voice for the downtrodden. Despite her new position, Phoolan's life remained fraught with challenges. There were rumors about her relationships post-prison, though they were neither confirmed nor publicly scrutinized with the same intensity as her criminal past. Her lifestyle remained modest compared to the lavish standards enjoyed by many of her contemporaries. Foolan did not possess grand estates, luxurious vehicles, or extravagant wardrobes. Instead, she lived a life tinged with simplicity, an echo of her days in the ravines where every moment was marked by the need to adapt and survive. Phoolan Devi's final chapter came abruptly. On July 25, 2001, she was assassinated outside her residence in New Delhi by Sher Singh Rana, who claimed the murder was an act of revenge for the Behmai massacre. The killing was a violent epilogue to a life that had been defined by cycles of victimhood, vengeance, and redemption. Rana surrendered to the authorities, framing the act as a retribution for his community. Foolan was buried according to Hindu rites, and her death reignited debates around justice, caste, and gender in India. Foolan left behind a complex legacy. She died without significant wealth, with much of her assets tied to modest living conditions. Her siblings and extended family continue to live in various parts of Uttar Pradesh, many maintaining a low profile, far removed from the turbulence that marked her life. Foolan's life story remains a testament to the potent mix of trauma, resilience, and the harsh socio-political realities that defined her era. It's a tale that challenges simple interpretations, one that resists being cast merely in shades of black and white.